The night had fallen with an unsettling stillness, a heavy blanket of silence that pressed in on me. I always found peace in the quiet of the night, the way the world seemed to hold its breath and give way to the moon's soft glow. But tonight, the stillness felt like an omen. The world was holding its breath for something darker to come. It all started a few days ago. Whispers on the news, rumors on social media, strange reports from nearby towns. People disappearing, entire families vanishing overnight. At first, I thought it was just another wave of fear-mongering. After all, the world has been through a lot, and people are quick to panic. But as the reports kept coming in, I could hear the desperation in the voices of the newscasters. Something was happening out there, something worse than the usual chaos. And then, just as quickly, it stopped being a rumor. I woke up one morning to find the streets empty, to hear sirens blaring and distant screams that were far too real to ignore. The police and emergency broadcasts were telling people to stay inside, to lock their doors. But the more I heard, the less I understood. What could be causing this? By the time night fell, I knew the truth. The dead were walking. I had been holed up in my apartment, alone. I wasn't a social person, never had been, and now I was grateful for my solitude. My place was small, but I had everything I needed to ride out whatever storm was coming. Or so I thought. The doors were locked tight. The windows were sealed. I had enough canned food and water to last me a few weeks, and I kept my back close. A comfort, at least, in this madness. Around midnight, the first scream ripped through the air, sharp and shrill. It echoed down the street below, waking me from the deep, anxious sleep I hadn't even realized I'd fallen into. The sound of a woman's voice, full of terror, full of pain. But it didn't fade. It stretched into something different, more primal, more guttural. Something wasn't right. I moved to the window and cautiously pulled the curtain aside, just enough to see the street. The glow of streetlights painted the pavement in ghostly hues. For a moment, all I saw was emptiness. But then, there, a dark figure stumbled into the light. At first, I thought it was a person, someone running, someone trying to escape. But as they turned, my blood turned to ice. It wasn't a person anymore. It was one of them. The thing, once human, had decayed. Its skin was stretched tight over its bones, sallow and sickly pale. Its eyes were vacant, black as coal. Its mouth hung open, a sickening groan bubbling from deep within its chest. The thing staggered toward the woman's scream, dragging its foot along the ground in a slow, methodical shuffle. It didn't notice me watching from the window, too fixated on its prey. I couldn't tear my eyes away, paralyzed by the horror of it all. I wasn't imagining it. The dead were truly walking, and they weren't the only ones. I heard the unmistakable sound of another groan from down the hall, followed by dragging footsteps. It was close. Too close. The panic set in quickly, blood pounding in my ears. I grabbed the bat, holding it tight in both hands, and took a deep, shaky breath. I had to get out of here. I couldn't stay locked in my apartment with those things on the other side of the door. The city was already being overrun, and it wouldn't be long before they came for me, too. I forced myself to move, creeping toward the door with my bat raised, ready for whatever would come through. I didn't know how to fight something like that, but I would do anything to survive. I cracked the door open just a sliver, listening. The hallway was eerily quiet, save for the distant thud of what sounded like something, or someone, hitting the ground. The faint groaning continued, but I couldn't tell where it was coming from. Panic clawed at my chest. Don't hesitate. Move. Get to the stairs. I took one step into the hall, feeling the cold air of the building hit my skin like a slap. I had no time to think. I needed to get to the roof, to figure out a way to escape. But the moment I moved, I heard something behind me, shuffling, dragging footsteps getting closer. The door creaked open behind me, and I turned just in time to see a figure stumbling into view. A man. His shirt was torn, and his skin had taken on a grayish, decayed hue. His eyes were bloodshot, crazed, and as he stumbled toward me, his lips peeled back in an unnatural snarl, revealing jagged, blood-stained teeth. His hands reached out, twitching, desperate for a meal. I didn't think. I just ran. I bolted for the stairwell, hearing the man's labored breathing behind me. His groans echoed off the walls, growing louder. My heartbeat was deafening in my ears, each step a drumbeat urging me forward. I reached the stairs in seconds, but just as I was about to grip the banister and ascend, a loud crash sounded behind me. I spun around. Another figure had appeared, this time a woman. Her face was covered in blood, her hands outstretched, nails like claws. She stumbled toward me, dragging her leg behind her in a grotesque, jerky motion. Two of them. I was trapped. With no time to waste, I scrambled up the stairs, my legs burning with the effort. I could hear them, both of them, behind me, the sound of their footsteps gaining on me. Their moans filled the air, mingling with the thumping of my pulse. If I didn't get to the roof soon, they'd catch me. There was no way I could outrun them. I reached the rooftop door and slammed into it, almost losing my footing in the process. My hand fumbled for the handle. The door was locked. Panic surged. Come on, come on, come on. I threw myself against it, adrenaline driving me forward. With a screech, the door flew open, and I tumbled out into the cold, night air. The city sprawled below me, dark and lifeless. The streets that had once been filled with life now seemed to stretch endlessly into a world of shadow and decay. I had no idea where to go. There was no escape. But I couldn't stay here. The air was thick with the sound of distant groans, more of them, getting closer. I turned to look for another way out, my mind racing. I needed a plan. I needed something, anything. And then I saw it. A group of them, moving in the street below. There were maybe 10 of them, staggering through the wreckage of overturned cars and debris. I counted 3 or 4 more on the opposite side of the block. But then, the most terrifying part, they weren't alone. A group of survivors, desperate and ragged, were trying to make their way through the streets, huddled together in a tight, frantic cluster. But they weren't just avoiding the zombies. They were fighting them. The survivors had weapons, blunt objects, knives, anything they could find, and they were hacking and slashing at the zombies, trying to push their way through the horde. But it wasn't enough. It would never be enough. My breath hitched. The weight of the decision pressed on me. I could run. I could hide. But I couldn't leave them behind. Not like this. I turned, my mind made up. I didn't know what would happen next, but I knew I couldn't sit here and wait to die. I picked up the broken shard of glass on the rooftop, gripping it tightly in my hand. It was time to fight. The last scream I heard was my own.